In terms of wide receivers, like I said, I love Kelvin Benjamin where he's going right now. I am happy reaching around early to get him.
Reaching around early to get
that
hold on. Drop, guys. Hold on.
Push it in as deep as you can.
Wow.
I like reaching 1 round early.
Everybody hold on to your butts.
I mean,
My man.
we reaching around.
I like reaching 1 round ahead to get Kelvin Benjamin.
That does sound good. Man.
Anyways.
It just kind of was a delayed release, but it was good. It was good.
Whatever.
Everybody hold on to your butts. What's up, guys? We're back. We're Crowd in Town Creative, coming at you. Living in Fiction, fantasy football podcast. As always, I have my buddy Art.
What's up?
And I got my buddy Dan.
How y'all doing?
And as always, I'm Fernie. We're going to talk AFC today. NFC today.
NFC.
NFC today.
If this is the first time you're hearing us, you should go back and listen to last week's episode. We did all the AFC. We missed a little bit of news because we recorded on Thursday before all the preseason week 3 games happened. So we'll go over some of that stuff in the news.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm going to try to get this out tomorrow. So you should be listening to this Friday morning.
Friday morning.
Yes.
Nice.
I'm going to be listening to this on the drive to work.
Yeah.
Me too. On the commute to work because it takes me half an hour to get there.
Jeez, man. That's a long time.
Well, do traffic, man.
I know.
All right. Anyway,
Speaking of work, man.
Speaking of work,
I'm done. I'm ready to quit my job.
I'm ready to go. Listen, I think we're all done.
Yeah.
I think we're all done. But anyway, just so you guys know, Crowd in Town Creative, you can find us on www.crowdintown.creative.com. You can have links to all of our social media accounts. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. And we're going straight into the NFC. So first of all, before we go on, let's talk some news. Art, tell us about the news.
All right, first thing on the news today is Julian Edelman. We found this out on Friday night. Well, the fears came out on Friday night, and it was confirmed on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
He is out for the whole season with the torn ACL.
So sad, man.
Yeah,
Love that guy.
He's a big part of what the Patriots do. But like I mentioned last week, they are set up for exactly something like this to happen. They still have Brandon Cooks, Julian Edelman, Gronk. They have Malcolm Mitchell, their second-year player, who played really well down the stretch last year. And they still have 4 really solid running backs. So I'm not worried about Tom Brady at all. I actually think this might be really good for Chris Hogan. Actually, that's the other guy I forgot to mention, the wide receiver. Yeah. He really emerged in the preseason, the week 3 game. I mean, they continually went to him. I think he's going to have a pretty good season now. But in terms of Julian Edelman, he did most of his work and does most of his work out of the slot. And I believe that they might be using some of their running backs for that, whether it's James White or Rex Burkhead, maybe even Dion Lewis. I think running backs are where a lot of Julian Edelman's targets are going to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
How high are you drafting Chris Hogan?
Dude, so that injury happened Saturday. I had a draft on Saturday morning. Mm-hmm. And I also had a draft on Sunday morning, and I reached real early for Chris Hogan.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you didn't get Brandon Cooks, or you would have gotten both? Or
I think there's one league where I have Gronk, Cooks, Hogan, and Burkhead, and the Patriots defense. I'm just losing week 9.
Yeah.
I just thought I'm gonna take a big old L on week 9.
Yeah.
I am all in on the Patriots this year.
You just need Gostkowski. You need to draft Gostkowski like my brother did in the 6th round.
So yeah, we're all in a league with my family, and Dan's brother Anthony decided he wanted to get the Patriots kicker in round 6.
You know, but I told Art, this is the guy that you always discount. wins none of his games and ends up the championship.
Yeah.
The champion.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it. He doesn't
right.
piss anybody off more than he pisses me off.
Don't make no sense.
That don't make no sense. Let's move on. Spencer Ware. Let's talk about Spencer Ware.
So he also got injured on Friday night, left the game early. They were hoping it wasn't going to be season ending. That I think the news coming out on Saturday morning was that he was just going to maybe miss at most 8 games. So he'd kind of have an Ezekiel Elliott kind of season, kind of show up in the middle of the year, pick things up. But they found out there was way more damage to his PCL than expected, so he is out for the whole year as well.
Yikes.
That really bumps up Kareem Hunt. I like Kareem Hunt before the injury. I thought he had a good chance to take over Spencer Ware's role or just get more, turn it from like a 50-50 split to a 60-40 in favor of Kareem Hunt. But now, I mean, Andy Reid came out and said he will be the feature back for the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you look at the history of Andy Reid's offense and just people he's drafted and selected to be his running back, he has had a ton of success. And they drafted him in the 3rd round. I am fully on board with Kareem Hunt. In fact, in the draft I had on Sunday, it's a little bit different. It's not a traditional snake draft. We do auction for the first 5 rounds, and then you do a regular snake draft. And it was 16 teams, so it was rough. But after I went A.J. Green in the 1st round, I then ended the 2nd round with Kareem Hunt. I was like, that's how confident I am in
Nice.
Kareem Hunt.
RB1.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's
Ware.
it.
All right, let's
Hunt?
move on. Let's move on to Cameron Meredith.
This was one of the most disgusting injuries of the weekend.
I still haven't seen him out. I don't want to see it.
That guy's knee bent in. I mean, not like a full, like it went forward, but it was pretty close. It was pretty disgusting.
No.
Happened on Sunday morning early, and in that same draft, someone took him in like the 9th round. Didn't realize he was basically didn't have a knee.
And you're such a gentleman, you just let them do it, huh? Like, hey,
Let it
you know,
run. Good for you.
I'm taking your money right now.
Congrats. But anyway, Cameron Meredith was him and Jordan Howard were going into the season before this injury were the only 2 people I would have thought about drafting out of Chicago. I guess this means more, targets for Kevin White and Kendall Wright and whoever their tight end may be. I don't know who. They haven't really said who is going to be their primary tight end. But for me, this just means I'm not drafting anyone outside of Jordan Howard. I mean, if you want to take a dart throw in the double-digit rounds for someone like Kevin White, by all means. But for me, I actually kind of think it hurts Jordan Howard because now they don't have as many playmakers to spread the field.
Yeah, I agree. And now I feel bad that I drafted Jordan Howard so early
Same
in
here.
another league.
And I drafted Cameron Meredith in a couple leagues already too, so that was nice.
Goofed up?
But I'm goofed
You
up.
done messed up. So I go to the office and I asked my buddy Andrew, who's like a big fantasy guy, and I go, dude, did you listen to the AFC, our little rundown? He's like, yeah, dude, you forgot Jamal Charles. What is wrong with you? All right, let's talk about Jamal Charles.
So I kind of left him out because at the point when we recorded, he had literally done nothing. They had slowly been easing him into the offense, and he hadn't played in any of the preseason games. And then they played the preseason game in week 3, and he looked really good. For a 30-year-old running back who's had 2 knee surgeries, he looked solid. And in that offense, we've seen running backs have success before. I think we've seen that C.J. Anderson isn't the most reliable of running backs. Sometimes he's really good, and sometimes he's really bad.
Yeah.
Devontae Booker had a good start to last season, but they kind of dwindled. And D'Angelo Henderson, the rookie I talked about last week, in that game in week 3, he fumbled the ball twice and lost it once. So they definitely do not want to hand the ball over to that type of running back. So given all of those things, I would happily take Jamal Charles where he's getting drafted. I mean, I've seen some leagues where he's not getting drafted at all, but most leagues you can get him in like the 13th, 14th round. I think it's worth it if he potentially might take the lead role in the offense.
Yeah, if he's anywhere close to where he was, I mean, that guy is a beast, monster.
Yeah.
Can win you the weeks.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about Corey Davis returning to practice.
So the one stat I heard from, I think I mentioned it last week with Mike Clay, is the fact that every wide receiver that has been drafted with a top 5 pick later that year in fantasy, the worst they've ever done or ended up as was wide receiver 17 in fantasy. He's back at practice, before he got I think it was a hamstring injury, he was running as like the number one wide receiver for the Titans, and that means something, especially with the high expectations for Mariota's third year. I think he could be a really viable option, especially how late he's going. And that's in that 16-team league I was in, I got him with one of my last 4 or 5 picks. So I think there's a ton of value there if he really emerges.
I love that offense. I love Mariota. You know, when you have Derrick Henry, you have I skipped right over DeMarco Murray,
But
yeah, that full offense, and then if he gets the space and the time to run, that Corey Davis, man, Mariota's just gonna hit him, and
absolutely,
it might be awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect storm.
Very cool. Vance McDonald to the Steelers. George Kittle, San Francisco 49ers.
So Vance McDonald got traded to the Steelers. I think it means something because if a team really didn't value a player, they would wait after this week to see if he got cut and hope that they could sign him afterwards. But if you really want somebody, you trade for them. My guess is they were not happy with Jesse James, who's been a fine tight end, but he's very slow. And they may have seen something out of Vance McDonald the last few seasons that warranted trading for him. So he is another one of those tight ends that we talked about last week where I wouldn't suggest drafting him unless you're in a super deep league. But it wouldn't hurt to watch the first couple weeks of the season and see if he emerges as someone that Big Ben goes to. In terms of what that means for the 49ers, one of the players that they've talked about a bunch in terms of the San Francisco 49er beat writers is this rookie George Kittle, their tight end. They really like the way he's been performing during training camp, and they've talked about him like they fully trust him as their number one tight end.
Nice.
So, and we'll talk about this later on as we go over the NFC West, but their offense looked absolutely incredible in this Week 3 preseason game. I know it's preseason. They're seeing a lot of vanilla defenses, but if there's even a chance they're remotely that good, George Kittle could be someone to go to later in the season.
Cool.
I want him on my team because he's just one letter away from being Skittles. So I think it'd be a really cool team name. That's why I want him.
Oh. All right.
Okay.
We went there.
I'm sorry.
Joe Flacco returns to practice.
This is huge news for the Ravens because Ryan Mallett has looked like absolute trash this entire preseason. So I think all Baltimore is very happy that he's coming back. Obviously, that means good news for Jeremy Maclin, Mike Wallace, whoever emerges as their tight end. But just in general, I don't think Flacco is a quarterback that anyone's targeting for their fantasy team, but it does help in terms of knowing that he's coming along, because when you hear someone has like a back injury, anything having to do with a disc, it makes you worry. So it's good to know he's coming back to practice.
All right. So before I move on to the NFC North and we get started on this rundown, just want to remind everybody, www.crowdandtowncreative.com. You can go find us there. You can find our email addresses. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop us a line. We're always willing to answer those questions for you, especially Art. I know Art likes to answer those questions. Art, your Twitter handle?
It is at Art Aguirre LIF. So ARTAGUIRRELIF.
And if any of you ladies want to slip into them DMs,
Open.
all right, guys.
That's what she said. Or he said.
Exactly.
Yeah, remember we don't
Exactly.
discriminate here. So any ladies,
Hey, or gentlemen, art in that community would be called a bear.
Take it like a compliment.
yeah, exactly.
You're a good-looking man, Art.
Hey,
Yeah.
I ain't going to argue with you.
Hey,
We literally, I see that. Here's the thing. I don't know if this translates well to the listener, but we literally all stared at each other like, "Where are we going? Where are we going after that?"
there are only so many ways I could compliment him, but yeah, he's a handsome guy.
Handsome guys. If any of you ladies are out there and like fantasy football, hey, why not? All right, let's go into the NFC North, and who I think is probably going to come out of that division, the Green Bay Packers. As much as it hates me, my in-laws are all Packers fans. My godfather's a Packers fan. Well, they just love reminding me how good this Packers team is, and I've been hearing a lot of good things about this Packers team. I mean, they're just ready to go.
Oh yeah,
They are easily the favorites to come out of the NFC North as the division winners. Rodgers, of course, you can argue for him to be the first quarterback off the board, I think.
or first person if you're my brother.
Oh, yeah, or first person. If you're Dan's brother, you're going to get him with your first overall pick. But, I think everyone went Patriots crazy after their first few preseason games, myself included. But Rodgers, I mean, he's still in my mind the best quarterback in the league. He had, he just finished another season, relying on Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb. They added Martellus Bennett. He's got a ton of options. They have officially moved Ty Montgomery as their starting running back, but he started as a wide receiver, so he's just another person that he can pass it to. And people underestimate how much he uses his legs in terms of every week, and that just helps his floor.
That guy can just run. If he gets in trouble, he can run. Find Jordy Nelson. Find Cobb, Randall Cobb. It's insane.
You go back, a couple seasons ago, or was it last season when he those 2 games that he won with the Hail Marys?
Hey, jeez.
That one, I'm remembering the one with the Cardinals where it was basically 2 Hail Marys to my boy, to Jeff Janis.
Oh my god!
Because he did it earlier against the Lions with Richard Rodgers, but
that's right.
The Cardinals game, he hit Jeff Janis for 2 just long Hail Marys, had got them tied up, and then the defense just kind of let them down. But all of it because of his legs. So I mean, it's easy for if you're one of those people who likes drafting quarterbacks early, totally get especially if you're in a league where you get 6 points for a passing touchdown. I totally understand using a first or even a second or even a first round pick on Aaron Rodgers, and I've seen that done already.
Oh yeah,
Aaron.
You guys want to play that? Here it is.
Now, Aaron, where are you? Where is Aaron right now? No Aaron, huh?
Not on any of our teams because
I am one of those people that waits on quarterback, but if you are not, you can find Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he's just ridiculous. And
so good.
Here's the thing: people around him are just absolutely healthy this year. Jordy Nelson is healthy.
So in terms of wide receivers, Jordy Nelson's easily first, second round pick. I like Devontae Adams, the value you get with him. I think his you can't rely on him to get the kind of touchdowns he got last season, but he's still a very reliable option. And Randall Cobb, given when Randall Cobb was getting drafted like 2 years ago, he is a steal in the double-digit rounds.
It's insane.
I know Martellus Bennett is kind of a polarizing player in terms of fantasy because some people just don't like Martellus Bennett. But I think he's going to be a reliable safety valve for Aaron Rodgers. He's a big target. I think he's going to be solid. In terms of their running backs, Ty Montgomery is the undisputed number 1 running back for that team.
Yeah.
However, I think the questions are who's behind him. I know everyone likes Jamal Williams, but I'm actually watching this preseason game right now, and maybe it's because I'm a little biased, but Aaron Jones from UTEP looks pretty damn
Love
good.
Aaron Jones.
So if you
Give
get
him a job.
there's been a couple leagues where I draft him with like my last pick just in case something happens to Ty Montgomery and he wins that job.
Picks up.
That's right.
Yep.
Picks up.
And their defense looks okay. They're not a team that I would rely on, but they could potentially be in some positions where you might stream them for 1 week. If you're one of those players who you get a defense in the second to last round and you just get someone who has a really good week 1 matchup like the Bills, I think they're playing the Jets week 1, you can look out for the Packers who normally aren't getting drafted and use them in a week when they have going up against a bad offense.
All right.
That's the Packers. I see them coming out of the North easily, and I can see them going to the NFC Championship easily.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Easily. As much as it pains me to say that, if you're listening, Bob, my father-in-law, they don't let me forget it. My brothers-in-law too. They do listen to the show, and my brothers-in-law are going to let me. Yep.
Why?
Yep.
Lions or Bears?
They like the Packers.
I
the
got you.
Packers. They are all about the Packers, man.
Yeah.
They bought the baby already, Packers gear.
Did they?
I'm
A little
not gonna
cheesehead?
put that. I'm not gonna put that on my baby.
Put it in, yeah.
I am not gonna put that on my
No,
baby.
that's cute.
No,
Yeah.
it's not cute.
It's very cute.
It is not cute.
I like
Anyway,
it.
all right, let's move on.
Are you guys gonna name him Aaron?
Aaron, and it's not a. It's a girl.
Girl, Daniel.
I'm sorry.
Aaron. No, we're
Aaron
not-
is still. You could.
Well,
hey,
yeah,
there's an
we
E in there.
could.
Come
Yeah,
on now.
Yeah.
Whatever. I hate you guys.
All right.
All right.
Let's
The
move
Vikings.
on. Let's go on to the Vikings and let's talk about. I can't. I don't like the way he looks, Sam Bradford. I just don't like the way he looks.
I get it.
Sammy Biscuits.
He looks like an '80s football player.
Yeah, that's true. He looks like he should have been in Varsity Blues.
Yeah,
Like he could have been the Paul Walker
Yeah,
role.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
And I get that. Yeah.
All right.
So let's talk
I think
about
he looks like Ryan Reynolds, like half brother, like the one that kind of like studies real hard.
I think what I don't like is the hunchback that he uses. Like, it looks weird.
Yeah.
He is a weird guy. He is a weird looking guy. Yeah.
That said, I own way too many shows of Sam Bradford in fantasy, especially in my teams where like it's like a really deep league. So in that 16-team league, he's like my second quarterback. Because it's 16 teams, so you got to make sure you have a solid backup. But I think he had, I think, one of the highest percentages of completed passes last season.
I can look that up for you.
It was just absurd. I mean, he was very efficient in that offense, and it's his second year. The biggest question for everyone that we're going to talk about for the Vikings is their offensive line. It's looked really rough. It looked rough last season, which is why none of their running backs, I think when Adrian Peterson got hurt, everyone was hoping, myself included, for Jerick McKinnon to emerge, but that offensive line wasn't letting anybody get through, or was letting everybody get through, I should say.
Jeez.
And in the third preseason game they just played against the 49ers, they looked just as bad. So I know they were missing a couple people. I'm hoping when they get those people back, it'll be better. That they'll look marginally better, but I am not going to hold my breath on that offensive line. But I do think they have enough playmakers on the team now where they can just allow Bradford to get the ball out quick, and he has a lot of really solid receivers there. In terms of their running backs, Adrian Peterson's not there anymore. They had signed Latavius Murray. Everyone thought that was going to be the guy until they drafted Dalvin Cook, who, because Murray was out with injury for the first few weeks of the preseason and training camp, Dalvin Cook has really emerged as someone that they are going to rely on. I am totally fine with him in the second or third round if that's going to be one of your starting running backs.
He's an exciting player.
Really
He's
exciting.
to
He
watch.
can catch the ball. He is solid.
Yeah.
Behind him, they have Latavius Murray. They have Jerick McKinnon. One of those players potentially might not be on the team once all the cuts happen. Jerick McKinnon, I think if he was in a different team with a better line, could do something special. So I think if there's a team out there looking for running back help, I think they'd be smart to trade for him. But I don't think there's anyone really worth drafting in terms of running backs outside of Dalvin Cook. For the wide receivers, I really like Stephon Diggs. There's one fantasy analyst named Matt Harmon who does something called reception perception, and he looks at the different receiving routes that a wide receiver runs and how successful they are against different kinds of coverage. And Stephon Diggs, given the coverage he was seeing, just had a ton of success last year. He's got him ranked pretty high in terms of his wide receivers, and I'm on board. I think he's great. Adam Thielen is a really good player to look for too.
I like Adam Thielen.
He's running exclusively out of the slot, and I think that's perfect for him.
Yeah.
I really like Kyle Rudolph, their tight end. I think he's a really special player too. He's always been really talented, and I know Mike Clay from ESPN is really high on him. I think there are a lot of pieces and a lot of things that make sense with this offense. It really comes down to their offensive line. In terms of their defense, I know a lot of players are drafting them because they played really well last season. I just think they have a pretty tough schedule in terms of the offenses that they're seeing. But I think they're still safe to draft. I just wouldn't reach too far to get the Vikings defense. But overall, this team could be special. I just think if everything has to kind of fall the right way for that to happen, and I think when you're in a division with the Packers, it's hard to make sure that everything goes right.
Oh yeah, going back to Rudolph. Rudolph seems to be one of the guys that is on almost all of my teams.
Yeah,
I seem to just be landing him, and I love it, man. Towards the end of the year last year, when he was a waiver wire pickup, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, and he was awesome.
Yeah, he's great.
All right. Anybody picking the Vikings coming out of the North? No.
Again, if everything, I think they have like. Aside, so I was talking to someone else about the Bengals last week, and I was telling them that they have, in terms of outcomes for their season, it could be really, really good if their line holds up and some of the players they've drafted who didn't play their first year and now play in their second year really emerge. But if their line is as bad as sometimes as it was last season, they could be again with a top 10 pick. And I think the Vikings are in the exact same position. If everything falls right, they really could end up in the playoffs and could make a run for things. But it could also go really bad, and they could end up with the top 10 pick.
Just depends.
You know who you just offended right now is the highest paid football player in the history of the NFL. You did?
Who?
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Come on, I tried to segue you,
No,
man.
I was kidding. I'm kidding.
I might as well have just like started the monologue from "Show Me the Money" from Jerry
right?
Maguire.
Oh, dude, where's
Like,
that one?
Yeah, where is that
Come
one?
on.
Show me the money.
Help you.
Help me help you. Yeah, man. Help me help you. Help me help you.
Well,
So-
the Lions just helped out Matthew Stafford on
Good
the rundown.
Lord.
I spelled Stafford with a money sign because
My man.
that dude just got paid. Real paid. But I always liked Matthew Stafford. I think he was. Everyone called him an injury risk because he kept getting hurt the first couple of years of his career. But he is a very exciting player to watch. I think they also are a team where they may have a couple star players, but they have a lot of really great athletes that are really good at helping out a quarterback. So, they have a bunch of running backs that are really good at catching the ball. They have Theo Riddick. They have Amir Abdullah, Zach Zenner, even though he's more of like a big plotting running back. I think he can also catch the ball really well. Dwayne Washington can catch the ball really well. And then they have all those wide receivers. They have Golden Tate.
Golden Tate is a
Jones.
beast.
I think he is so underrated. I think so many people
I agree with
I
that.
I think people still think of him as like the second wide receiver that was coming out of Seattle, but he really is a really good player.
Yeah, he's special.
They have Marvin Jones, who also I think was underrated with the Bengals. And they have this rookie, Kenny Golladay. The fantasy community is calling him Baby Tron because he is like 6'4", runs like a 4.5 40, like he's basically like a little Megatron. He just needs to get his routes better, cleaner. But they have all those players. They have Eric Ebron, who last year looked really solid.
Yeah.
He's always kind of like an injury concern, but he looks really good. So all of those things considered, I think Stafford's a safe pick if you're one of the people that waits on quarterbacks, or if you like having a solid backup. I think he's absolutely worth drafting.
Big time. And that's why I can't pick the Vikings to beat the Packers, at least. I think if anybody from this
Division. Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Aside from the Packers, I think
Actually,
the Lions.
I like the Lions a lot.
Yeah.
Just, from what I saw last year, I mean, whenever they play the Cowboys, it just frustrates me. But they're just a good, solid team. I think they just need to put that final piece together.
Yeah.
And they could make a run.
My concern is they beat a lot of bad teams last year, so it made them look really good.
Yeah.
So, I could be completely wrong. I think they potentially could have a really tremendous season. I think it'll be good enough to withhold fantasy value for the players on their team. And the good thing is everybody, because they always feel underrated, is like a value pick.
Yeah.
Stafford's getting drafted in the mid rounds. They don't have an official starting running back. I think everyone thinks it's going to be Amir Abdullah, but all of their value is really depressed. So you can get all of the Lions at a really good value wherever you're drafting them. And I would not touch their defense.
All right. Oh, there it is, the Lions. All right, let's move on to the Chicago Bears. The Bears. Yeah, well, why do we have to do that, though, man?
I don't know. I just like it.
I'm sure there's some listener out there that's gonna be like, God, what? Enough with the Saturday Night Live and the Bears, man.
It just feels good.
It does, but we can't really talk about anything else on the Bears. Art,
No, I just wanted to say that.
tell me about the Bears. Tell me about the Bears.
Okay, so they still haven't. They're still playing with us. They're still messing with us, making us think that they're going to roll out Mike Glennon, and maybe they will. But at some point, Mitchell Trubisky's going to take over.
Yeah.
He has looked. He looked insanely good in the first preseason game. He's looked okay. He's had a couple of shaky moments over in week 2 and week 3, but it is clear he is the better quarterback.
Just set him free. What do you guys got to lose? Come on.
Yeah. I don't know what they're waiting for.
Yeah. We've seen Glennon, and Glennon's okay. I like Glennon. He's decent.
I'm always a believer of, look, if you really understand, okay, we really don't have a chance to win the Super Bowl this year.
No.
And they don't.
No.
They just lost their number one wide receiver.
No.
Their defense is going to be a pretty good run defense. I think they have questions in the secondary. But I think most teams need to be more honest with themselves and say, okay, we are definitely not in a position to win the Super Bowl. So what can we do this season to make ourselves better?
Yeah.
Give this kid a shot.
They need that coach from the water boy to just pick up some plays, try stuff out, see if it works.
Imagine a baby and then come up with a play. Oh, little baby.
I think their concern is that, I think Blaine Gabbert's a good example. I think a lot of people thought that Blaine Gabbert could have been a really good quarterback, but he started too soon, got spooked, and never let that go. And anytime he saw pressure, he just crumbled. And so I think they're trying to protect their quarterbacks from having that kind of a start to their career. But moving forward, we're talking way too much about the quarterback. Jordan Howard is absolutely draftable. I think losing Cam Meredith, like I said before, hurts his value a little bit. I think there's a rookie back there in the running back stable that they have named Tariq Cohen. He has looked really good, but as of right now, he is like fourth on the depth chart. But I'm always a big believer that in terms of most NFL franchises, they will recognize talent and eventually he'll become the backup. So I like throwing a dart at him at the very end of your draft. In terms of their wide receivers, my guess it's Kevin White, maybe Kendall Wright. One of those two will emerge as like someone worth drafting or someone worth having, but I'm not going to go out of my way to draft them in any of my drafts. I just don't believe in either one of them. I mean, Kevin White is a former first-round pick, so hopefully he puts it together, but he has just a bad injury history. I just feel like there's no reason. Same thing with their tight ends. I know they drafted Adam Shaheen, and they still have Zach Miller, but again, like there's just no one there that's appealing to me outside of Jordan Howard.
Yeah, probably not wasting a draft pick on anybody.
Nope. Anybody on the Bears. All right. So that's the Bears, and that's the NFC North. This is usually where we put in ads, but nobody listened to us last week and didn't want to put ads. No. I did hear some concern. I did hear some, not concern, some interest.
There you go.
So if you're out there and you want to advertise with us, please advertise with us. crowdandtalkcreative.com.
Yeah.
We are a young and up-and-coming company with 3 very attractive young men.
Yeah, that's how it
That's a
sounds.
win-win.
Yeah,
That's a win-win.
I think so.
far as I'm
Win, win,
concerned.
win.
Help us help you.
Help
Help
me
us.
help you.
Exactly.
So we're going to take a small little break. And by small little break, we're probably just going to breathe for a second. And we'll be right back. All right. So we're going to do...
Chug it football
All right. So...
all night.
all night. All
Don't
right.
interrupt the drop.
I know, man. I'm sorry. All right. Let's go. Let's move.
There you go. Are you ready? Are you
Yeah,
ready?
go.
Okay, here it goes. Ready?
All right. In case you didn't notice, that was Art, like, dropping in the middle there.
Look,
Yeah.
I was telling you what it should sound like when we come back from break, and I just made the
You
jump.
know what? We shouldn't even put the real music on it. It just should be Art, like, doing that.
I think so.
Anyway, if you guys are just joining us, which I hope not, I hope you guys have been listening this whole time because...
Yeah, that'd be kind of weird if you just dropped in.
Well, I mean,
20
you never
minutes.
know. Like, fast forward. They're like, fast forward. I don't want to hear
That's how I
about...
enjoy. That's how I try out podcasts. I drop in 25 minutes in.
I've done it before where I've listened. I'm like, nope, I don't want to hear this garbage.
Yeah. Oh,
Let's
yeah.
move on. Let's move on. Like 15 seconds, especially on iTunes. By the way, we are on iTunes. Hit subscribe. Hit the subscribe button because that, honestly, iTunes is so awesome.
And like, if you go to UTEP or if you go to any other university, go to like the computer lab and hit subscribe on all of their computers.
Yeah.
It's
On
not,
your
it's
friends'
not
accounts,
illegal.
on your accounts, no.
And with like, hey, can I borrow your phone? Yeah, sure. And then subscribe.
Just because you love us.
Hey, I lost my phone. I don't know how I'm going to get home. Can I just borrow yours real quick? And then boom, subscribe to us.
Sas. Subscribe.
All right. So, again, crowdandtalkcreative.com. You can go through...
Sauce. Did you just, I'm sorry. I just like registered. Did you sauce it? Okay.
Sas. Subscribe.
Sauce, bro. You can peruse our gallery. We got a bunch of photos up there if you want to look and see what we're capable of.
Videos too.
Yeah, we got some videos too. I just finished a new video. Hopefully, you guys will be able to see it here pretty soon. But enough of that. Let's move on. NFC West and my boys.
Let me take this one over. Seahawks, let's go. Wilson, draft him. Running backs, draft him. Wide receivers, draft them all. They're the team.
If you could not tell, Dan is a fan of the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah. Okay, look, I mean, we went to Seattle real quick. We saw a game, and it was probably one of my most favorite experiences of my life.
That sounds
It was
awful.
amazing.
That sounds awful.
I got to see Marshawn Lynch score a touchdown.
That was good.
Come on.
No one cares.
Come on.
Beast mode.
I don't care.
It was cold. It was wet. It was rainy.
And it was
we were
awesome.
miserable. Yeah, it was awesome.
Awesome.
It sounds
Oh
about
my
right.
gosh.
That sounds about right.
Fan for life.
Anyway,
after
so
that. Okay.
Russell Wilson is one of my favorite quarterbacks to draft this year. Unfortunately, you have to get him a little bit earlier than I like waiting on quarterback, but if I'm not waiting, there's like 3 tiers of quarterbacks. If I'm not waiting at all, I'm going for Russell Wilson because I do believe, and I'm a little less believing after they lost their left tackle, but I do believe he could end up as the number 1 quarterback this year at the end of the year.
Wow.
You heard it.
Yeah.
You heard it here.
That's a guarantee.
Number 1.
He looks incredible this preseason.
Dude, he does.
And all of his weapons look amazing. Plus, they really don't have like a true number 1 running back. I really do think it's going to be a committee. And I think that might even push him even more to throw the ball.
His connection with Graham has grown. I mean,
And
Paul Richardson.
Graham looked great
Yeah.
last year, and that was his first year coming off an Achilles tear.
Hey.
And that, you never see that. So if that happened last year, I can only imagine how good he looks this year.
Yeah.
A lot of these analysts are talking about how Russell Wilson is really going to fall into his role as this quarterback.
I believe it. That's what I'm saying. So in terms of like the tier, like if I'm reaching for a quarterback early, it's Russell Wilson. If I want someone who's like a little mid-level but also has some high potential, I've been going with Mariota. And if I'm going super, super cheap, so in that 16-team league where I just wanted to rack up running backs, wide receivers, and a tight end before while other people were going for quarterbacks, my cheap guy is Carson Wentz. And we'll talk about him later, but I love Wilson. In terms of their running backs, I don't like drafting Eddie Lacy just because I don't trust. I do not.
You Eddie! I know you! I see you on television! I gotta keep it going. You're the man, right?
So, yeah, when I'm drafting, I am, blank you, Eddie. I am not drafting Eddie Lacy.
No, you could say,
Yeah.
but I bleep it out.
When I'm drafting, I am like, you, Eddie. I am not drafting him. I like drafting Thomas Rawls. He's always looked solid, but a lot of people like CJ Procise, but that dude just cannot stay healthy. Their staff even sounds like they're frustrated with him.
Shame too. 'Cause
I
talented guy.
really like Chris Carson, their rookie running back. He was like a 7th-round pick. It feels like Seattle always knows how to just draft late-round solid running backs. So he's another one of those like Tariq Cohen. We talked about Marlon Mack last week. Some of these running backs you want to draft late just to see if something happens. I like Chris Carson a whole lot. In terms of their wide receivers,
Douglas
Baldwin.
The dude you just cannot, he just keeps coming.
Yeah. I mean,
Crazy.
One of the best route runners, really good deep threat. I think he's just so solid.
Touchdowns are there, routes are there, yards.
Now,
Everything.
behind him, it looks like it's going to be Tyler Lockett and Paul Richardson. And there are rumblings that they're trying to trade Jermaine Kearse and potentially that the Browns are interested in trading for him. I like both of those guys. I really like Tyler Lockett. But there's no one there that, unless you're in a really deep league, I wouldn't like reach for either one of those. It's just Doug Baldwin, and if you want some dart throws later in your draft, you can go for Tyler Lockett or Paul Richardson. And then I like Jimmy Graham. Like I said, if he looked that good last year, coming off of an Achilles rupture, I think just the sky's the limit for him this season.
And it's Jimmy Graham. He's still Jimmy Graham. He's got that potential. I don't know about I don't know where you would rank his floor as a player, but the ceiling is just through the roof.
I was going to say, I think the concern with him is always like, okay, is he going to get the targets?
Yeah.
But I'm not concerned. I think they're slowly going to start transitioning. I think this is their last year where they're going to be that Seahawks team where it's a really strong defense and a solid run game. I think they're going to start transitioning more because of how good Russell Wilson's going to be into a pass-first offense. All that said, there's going to be people who reach for that defense. I don't think there's a need for it. I don't think they're as good as they used to be a few years ago.
Not the Legion of Boom anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they're going to be solid. I think they signed Tremaine Brock, I think, from the 49ers, who was a really good player. He had some potential trouble with the law, but it all got cleared up, and they signed him immediately. So that's going to help their defense a lot. But I never understand reaching for a defense that early. But it seems like they're getting drafted right up there with the Broncos and
Patriots.
Patriots going a little bit later.
Okay.
No, it's like those two and the Chiefs and the Texans. But yeah, I know I'm not going to stop someone from reaching for the Seahawks because they're a good defense.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of chemistry. They've
Yeah,
been
I mean,
together the longest, like 5 years.
5
right?
years. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. All right, that's the Seahawks, guys. Let's move on to the Cardinals and my man, old man Carson Palmer.
I'm still a believer.
He had a rough season last season, but I think he can still turn it around. John Brown, that was his first game last week in the preseason. What did he do? He just caught a touchdown. I think he looks really good.
John Brown.
Palmer, it's all about the fact that he has so many playmakers. He has Larry Fitzgerald, who's solid. He has John Brown. They don't have a lot of help at the tight end position. They kind of have a bunch of guys that can help out depending on the situation. But wide receivers, they have J.J. Nelson still there. They have Jaron Brown. And, of course, they have David Johnson.
Just ridiculous.
I just think Palmer's solid. It's really going to come down to if they can keep him upright, if their O-line keep him upright. In terms of running backs, David Johnson is the man. He is my number one running back going into this season. He has already let it be known that he wants to have 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving by the end of the year, and that their coaching staff has said, "Hey, let's do it. If that's what you want, let's go for it."
Man, love that guy. I need a number 1 draft pick at some point this season.
I've gotten it once already, and he was my number 1 pick.
Oh, man.
But
Gotta have him.
he's solid. Wide receivers, Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's very underrated. People just see this old man, but he is still the number 1 option for Carson Palmer. John Brown, he was getting drafted pretty early last season. Now he's lasting into the later rounds because of his injury risk, but I still think he has the upside to be a solid wide receiver. So I like him, and their defense looks good. If Kim Dichie has emerged as a really good pass rusher. They're getting Tyrann Mathieu back, the Honey Badger. If he can play like he did before he got hurt, sky's the limit for that defense. So I think they're not getting drafted as early as some of these other ones. And I think if you wait a little bit on defenses, the Cardinals defense could be worth it.
As a Seahawks fan, this is the team I'm worried about.
Yeah,
hands down, for
absolutely.
sure.
That's really the only team to worry about.
Yeah, they look good.
All right. Anything else?
That's it.
Nope, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Los Angeles Rams. And a lot of things I've been hearing about Jared Goff, and you just don't know. We don't know.
No.
He's a big question mark.
This is for most of the players that are still holdovers from last season, this is the first time they have a legitimate offensive focused coaching staff. It feels like Jeff Fisher was just kind of like hanging out. Like, hey,
Oh, man.
Go do this. Like if you watched Hard Knocks last year and if you watched All or Nothing on Amazon Prime, I mean, he is just one of the most least aspiring people you could ever meet. I don't know. It's just crazy. I don't understand how he became a coach.
Or how they won.
It's just
At
crazy.
least half of the season.
But so they didn't look as good in the third preseason game, but the second preseason game, they looked really good against the Raiders. Now, it could just be that, they just put it all together that day and it looked good, or it could be that the Raiders defense is really that bad, which they really could be. But Goff looked pretty solid. And I believe in Sean McVay. He's a super young coach. I think he's younger than I am, which is insane.
Yeah.
And I don't think Goff is someone that you can draft and rely on. But I was in an MFL 10 where was it Carson Wentz? I think he was my number 1. And I just grabbed Jared Goff because I was like, I just need 1 week from you, dude.
Yeah. And he could do it now. He's got weapons. I mean, he's got at least a little bit more weapons.
A lot more weapons now.
Yeah.
I will say, if nothing else, their GM got active and said, okay, we've been doing this thing where we're pretending that Tavon Austin's the number 1 wide receiver long enough. Let's get some playmakers. And that's what they did. So in terms of their running back, we all know it's a girly show.
Yeah. And I think he just bounces back this year. I really, really do.
I agree. I think he's going to have a solid season. He's drafting it's kind of baked into his value, his draft spot.
Yeah.
There's still that potential that he's seeing 8 men in the box, and he's still kind of missing the gaps. But I think he's going to be solid. I think he's going to turn it around, look more like his rookie year.
Yeah.
Wide receivers, it's tough because I think Jared Goff has developed some chemistry with Cooper Kupp, and it's really clear. He's also developed some chemistry with Robert Woods. So the only preseason game that we saw where he had Sammy Watkins, Watkins had been on the team for like 4 days. So it's hard to tell what this offense is going to look like. But Sammy Watkins, if you look at his numbers and compare them to other players, he was on pace to have a Julio Jones type career, and that's even with him missing some games. And so, Julio, a lot of people forget that Julio Jones missed some games with his foot injury as well. And people were talking about him as an injury risk. And so if you think about all of those things, the other thing people were saying is like, do you really want to draft a quarterback or a wide receiver who's catching passes from Jared Goff? But that's not stopping people from drafting Demaryius Thomas, who's catching passes from Trevor Siemian.
DeAndre Hopkins, who's getting balls from I don't know who, but I don't even know. Yeah.
Savage and Watson's are both pretty bad. But
not to mention Jaguars. See, I don't even know his name. I don't even want to say
Allen
it.
Robinson.
Don't say his name. Don't say Blake Bortles.
Yeah. Balake.
Yes, jeez.
Balake Bortles.
Balake?
Yeah, I think if people are willing to take a risk on all those players, there's no reason why you shouldn't take a risk on someone like Sammy Watkins. I was able to get, in one of my drafts, I think I went Fournette with the first pick, and that was before he was dealing with the foot injury. But I eventually went with like 3 or 4 other wide receivers and then still got Sammy Watkins. I think he's solid. I think Robert Woods is solid. I think there's going to be a lot of short dink and dunk passes. So if you're in a PPR league, I think a lot of these players could be helpful to you. And if nothing else, it's good to see that there's some progress being made in Los Angeles and that at least there are viable options. The other person that I think, another tight end, I think there's a large group that we're kind of creating and talking about in terms of tight ends who you don't want to draft but potentially could emerge. I think Tyler Higbee is someone from Los Angeles that could emerge as someone who's reliable. And their defense. They have some really solid pieces. I know Aaron Donald's still holding out for a contract, which is absolutely deserved because he is one of, if not the best defensive player in the league.
Yeah.
But they also brought in Wade Phillips as their defensive coordinator, and you've seen what he can do with the defense, even one that's somewhat mediocre. So I wouldn't draft them actively, but if you're one of those people who waits, I think you can definitely play the matchups with like the Rams and maybe another defense you pick up.
Nice.
Nice.
All right, that's the Rams, guys. Let's move on to the 49ers and some interesting stuff we were talking about earlier with the 49ers. Tell me about that.
So I wasn't interested in almost anybody on the 49ers except for Pierre Garçon and Carlos Hyde, and that was it. And then this third preseason game happened, and it was kind of, they had the spotlight because it was the only game going on with them and the Vikings, and their defense looked really good. They looked like they got a steal with Reuben Foster with where he was drafted. It's still not a defense I would like pursue in terms of fantasy value because I think they might have the worst cornerbacks in the league. But that just means that it's not going to be complete blowouts in their games and they're going to be competitive. Brian Hoyer looked more than just a competent quarterback. He looked solid. It seems like him and what's the coach's name? Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
It seems like those guys are always on the same page. They spent some time together. I believe it was in Cleveland when Brian Hoyer was there. And it seems like they just picked up where they left off because he was just commanding that offense. Carlos Hyde looked really good. What was really impressive, too, is we think of Carlos Hyde as like kind of a power back. But when he scored on a receiving touchdown at the very end of in the end zone or in the red zone. So I think Carlos Hyde is worth drafting. One thing that did emerge from that third preseason game also is that everyone was looking at Jonathan Williams as someone to draft as potentially a handcuff to Carlos Hyde. That is not the case anymore. There is some guy there named Matt Breida. Huh? I kept hearing Guida, and I was like, wait a minute, that can't be right.
Burrito.
I know, right?
Breida?
Brieda.
Breida.
And he is an undrafted. I believe he was undrafted. He was like a 7th round pick. And Adam Schefter, in one of his podcasts, talked about him, how he was really impressing everybody. And sure enough, he clearly looked like the number 2 running back, and he looked pretty good. So I've taken some dart throws at him, because you hit the end of your draft, especially if you're in a pretty deep league, it gets thin pretty quick. And so if you got to figure out, some people that you're hoping could potentially have a role in an offense, he's someone I'm looking at.
I think that's a high chance. I'm not sure if Hyde's ever played a full 16 games,
I don't think
right?
he has either.
Oh.
And so wide receivers, Pierre Garçon looked. Everyone was hoping, okay, the number 1 wide receiver in a Kyle Shanahan offense has value. He looks like he's going to catch a ton of balls this season. I mean, that offense was absolutely being run through Pierre Garçon.
Nice.
I think he's getting completely underdrafted where he's going. I've been trying to get him in every draft that I'm in. And the other person that I was talking to Fernie about is Marquise Goodwin. He is a Olympic athlete. He's got some crazy speed. He just burned some fools on the Vikings in that preseason game.
Art just showed me that tape, and it's like, man, they closed their eyes and he was gone.
And Hoyer can hit those deep balls, so I think he could have some value. He might be someone that is not going to get drafted, but potentially will be picked up at some point in the season or used. I think we talked about Kenny Stills last week as someone that I'm going to be like playing a lot in daily fantasy, and I think Marquise Goodwin might be another one of those people. And we already talked about George Kittle earlier in the podcast. I think he could be a solid play for the 49ers.
I'm sorry, we're listening to you. It's just Fernie's playing footsie with me under the table.
I wasn't trying to. I was I'm going to stretch my legs out, and then all of a sudden I brushed up on Dan, and I was like, I give him that look like, I'm
it's
all right
happened
with
a
it.
couple times. Yeah, but I thought you knew, so I was
No,
like,
I didn't
gonna
know.
do the
I was
whole
like,
thing,
what is
oh,
this?
maybe he didn't know. I was just going to leave
No.
it here. And it just kept happening.
And it just kept happening.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's some chemistry going on right here.
I like it.
Me too.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I feel like we have some Hoyer Garcon chemistry right here.
So here's the question, man, and just to kind of wrap up the 49ers, is it possible that they're a sleeper team and they could string a couple wins together and then get hot at the end of the season?
I think they have enough to do better than people expected. You know, they were definitely. You could argue that they were the worst team in the league last year.
Right.
It just so happens that they won one more game than the Browns. But I think I think they can go from one of, if not the worst team in the league, to a mid-level team. But I don't think they have enough talent on both sides of the ball to emerge
deep
as like a wild card or anything like that. I think they're a year or two away.
Possible 8-8 team.
Yeah,
possibly.
absolutely. I mean, and that's huge. I mean, I think for most teams to go from like a first or second overall pick to going even 6-10 is a big improvement.
That's a big league.
Yeah, and I don't think this division is so lopsided anymore. You know, for the past couple of years, it's been all Seahawks.
Yeah,
and now I
right.
think it could be as interesting as the Cowboys division. You know, just
the NFC
wait
East.
and see and what's going on and how it's going to end.
All right, we're going to power through. We're going to go to the NFC South and the darlings of the HBO show
Hard Knocks.
Everybody's watching the Buccaneers, and I do like me some Jameis Winston.
Yeah,
He just seems like a good guy, man.
yeah.
I know that there's some concerns with him, you know, throwing balls in places he's not supposed to, or just heaving them up. But I like him. I like him.
So
I don't know why.
He's like he kind of had a Joe Mixon type start to his NFL career because of the allegations against him that I know they settled out of court, so that's not something we'll necessarily focus in on for the podcast. But in terms of his talent at the NFL level, he has gotten better every single year. Now, I know, and I agree, I think it was Greg Rosenthal who was talking about how he may never really not be the guy who kind of gets, you know, blitzed and someone's holding onto his arm and he just throws a wild ball out there and gets intercepted. I don't think he might not ever get over that, but he is a very solid quarterback. He has kind of like Matthew Stafford has a ton of talent around him. He's got Mike Evans, who arguably could be one of the best wide receivers in the league.
God, he's huge.
He's ginormous.
That
And then
guy
they added Deshaun Jackson, who it's insane how fast he is given his age. Like
I picked him up you picked him up for me.
yeah.
And that
What was
makes
that?
me very happy.
Do you hear this collusion that I have to deal with all the time?
Listen.
Collusion.
We
Listen
had
up.
an auto draft for Fernie, so that's what he means by
Auto draft, and by auto draft, Arthur means he didn't give him Spencer Ware, and we all knew he should have. There was like two players on the table where I was like, give them, okay, if we're on the computer, Fernie would be getting this dude right now. He's like, no, we got to be fair. We got to be fair.
I appreciate your pick for me. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. And you know what was funny is like I walked in the door and everybody was like, we just finished. Where were you?
We literally put up like the last name on the board.
I'm sorry, guys.
Anyway, so I think Jameis Winston, where he's getting drafted, I think he's got a ton of value there. In terms of their running backs, I like getting Doug Martin, where he's getting drafted. You just need to know that you're gonna be without him for the first 3 weeks because he's suspended. What's crazy is like Jacquizz Rodgers is most likely going to be the starter for those 3 weeks. Could potentially steal the job if he plays well enough.
Yeah.
But like nobody likes him, and I was in that 16-team league. And he maybe went in like the last round.
Yeah, dude, he's almost going undrafted.
You know what? He might be undrafted in that league, and I'm like, This is a starter for 3 weeks.
Not just the starter, but last year when he was healthy and he was going, those were like 20 points a game he was scoring a week. It was amazing.
So what you're saying is pick him up.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because it's like you're picking up a guy just to use for 3 weeks, but there's potential for more. But it's hard because it's like he hasn't looked all that fantastic in the preseason. So, like, in that league, I grabbed someone like Marlon Mack and held on to him because I think he's someone that has more. There's a stronger likelihood that he could steal that job because, especially with what's going on with Andrew Luck, not knowing when he potentially may start, he could win that running back job versus Jacquizz Rodgers. But it's crazy that he's not getting drafted in most leagues.
So last year, and the only reason I want to look it up is because I picked him up in a ton of leagues in his 5 starts. Start 1, 18 points. 2, 17 points. 14 points, 16 points, and it was just the last game of the year where he scored only 9. But I mean, that's a solid starter that you got from either the waiver wire or this year from the last pick of the draft.
Yeah. So if he's available and I was in a draft where for whatever reason, I even in the middle of the thing, I started looking at the rules. So I'm like, why are all these RBs going and no one's grabbing wide receivers? Because I had the 2nd overall pick and I went Le'Veon Bell. And that somehow all the way left back to me when I picked again was A.J. Green. And people kept focusing on running back. So I got A.J. Green, I got Brandon Cooks, DeAndre Hopkins.
Jeez.
And I was like, what are these people doing? I think I got Gronk.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I don't know what's going on. But anyway, at a certain point, I started realizing.
You got Gronk too?
Yeah.
I hope they're listening to this right now. So way they know.
Yeah. And so
what are you guys doing?
At a certain point, I was like, okay, I have a solid RB1. And I just got to piece together an RB2 every week. So later on, I reached up and I grabbed Darren McFadden. I was like, okay, I got weeks 1 through 6 taken care of, or 1 through 7. And then later, if I had missed on him, I would have grabbed someone like Jacquizz Rodgers, and then I grabbed like Giovanni Bernard, and then I grabbed Rex Burkhead because I figure, okay, I can play the matchups. RB2 is a lot easier to figure out than RB1, and there's a ton of wide receiver value because again, you can play the matchups on those. So I don't mind Jacquizz Rodgers as someone like, okay, if you did that where you went RB1 early and then you just grabbed a bunch of wide receivers and you need to piece together an RB2, I think he's a perfect guy to start with.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then, wide receivers. So, of course, you're drafting Mike Evans 1st round.
Oh, yeah.
Deshaun Jackson, he is still going to be a boomer bust player. I don't care what offense he's in just because of the nature of the way he plays. And in terms of tight ends, I know they drafted O.J. Howard in the 1st round. But Cameron Brate is a guy right now. They've been talking up O.J. Howard just in terms of how good he has been in blocking. They were surprised at how good he was. But they are not talking about him as someone that's going to start off as their starter. He potentially might be in terms of 2 tight end sets. But I like Cameron Brate a lot. He's someone that I've been drafting late in rounds as a tight end that I think you can rely on. Yeah. And their defense should be solid.
All right, and you reach for that defense on the Buccaneers. Let's move on and to who came out of the NFC last year, the Falcons, and then just the Super Bowl was painful to watch. And you know what? Here's the thing. I think it's going to follow them. I think it's going to follow. And the things like that happens to teams, and some teams are resilient and they bounce back, and some teams are just not. And it's across sports too. A couple years ago, the Spurs lost that it hurt too. At 2013, they lost to the Heat, and they came back determined to win, and they were just on fire to win. And I have to ask, are the Falcons?
Was, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Ray Allen.
Yeah,
was Ray Allen shut that down?
Yeah.
That's
Ray Allen
right.
shut it down. It was rough to see, and the worst part about it is, and I know we're jumping into another sport, but
I can talk about
that Manu Ginobili missed that play still hurts. But I guess what I'm trying to, the point is that team really came back. And so my question, just as an overall fan, is, are the Falcons going to come back from that loss?
I am a believer. I think they've looked pretty solid in the preseason. They had a rough week 3. But I still think they're going to be really solid. Matt Ryan, it looks like, who did they bring in? I think, was it Lane Kiffin? Or no, it was a Sarkisian, I think, is their offensive coordinator now. And he looks solid in terms of like getting the offense back where it was before.
You're right over there?
It's because you're trying to think of the name, and Freddie's just like nodding, like, yeah, I have no idea who you're talking about.
What the hell is Sarkeesian?
Yeah, you can tell me any name right now. I'll nod it. Let's look it up.
Let's make sure I know what I'm talking about.
Dude, but to answer your question, honestly, maybe it's just because I was so emotional about it.
Yeah.
I haven't so far yet landed with any Falcon on any of my teams.
I landed with Matt Ryan
By the
this
way, I
year.
was right. Sarkeesian.
Sarkeesian. Okay.
I landed with Matt Ryan this year, and I'm excited about Matt Ryan. I think people underestimate him.
Yeah, and he does so well. And speaking of weapons, he has got them all.
And if you just think about it, they didn't lose anybody in the offseason.
No.
Their offensive line is still going to be solid. They just gave Devontae Freeman a big extension. I think they're going to be just fine. Anyone you were drafting before, anyone who you drafted last year, you're drafting them again this year. The only addition, so Julio Jones, Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, where he's going, especially in PPR leagues, is going to be just fine. Their tight end is the one guy I want to talk about, Austin Hooper.
Mr. Hooper.
He came on last year at the end of last season. I think he's going to be solid this year now that he's in second year with the team. I don't know if I would draft their defense, but they're another one of those defenses that I think you could find weeks where you stream them. But in terms of their offensive playmakers, I'm still all on board with the Falcons.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And talk to me about that defense.
Like I said, I think they have some really young players. They added a few more people in the draft this year. I think they're just a streamable defense. Not someone that I'm gonna make my the mainstay of my defense or in terms of my fantasy team. But you can definitely find weeks where you stream them.
They're such a big scoring defense, man. I remember last year, between those touchdown returns, fumble returns, they were a good streamer.
Yeah.
Week
They
to
have
week.
some really nice young players, some really fast players on
Yeah.
defense.
All right, that's the Falcons. I think I really do think it's going to be between them and the Bucks in the NFC South. That's my opinion.
I think so too.
I know we haven't hit the other two teams, but let's get into it. Let's get into the Saints and my man Drew Brees.
He's the man. I mean, he puts up 5,000-yard seasons like nobody's business. I think where he's going drafted is exactly right after Rodgers and Brady.
Yeah, he's a vampire. He's timeless, ageless.
There's no reason. He still has a really solid stable of wide receivers, really solid tight end. They got an insane number of running backs. Draft Drew Brees. If you're one of those people who likes to reach up, if you're not getting Russell Wilson, get Drew Brees earlier.
I picked him up, I think, 2 years ago, and he was just performing.
And he's still good.
Dude.
In terms of running backs, I think Ingram and Peterson are getting drafted right around the same spot. I don't know what's going to happen with this group of running backs because you heard rave reviews about Adrian Peterson, coming off of his injury. Mark Ingram, of course, always looks good. But Alvin Kamara has looked really good. It seems like they're going to use him in the Darren Sproles role where he is just the pass catcher coming out of the backfield, maybe even lining up in the slot or sometimes even out wide.
Yeah. Traverse Cadet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think where they're all going, that question of how they're going to be used or how much they're going to be used is baked into where they're getting drafted. I think they're all draftable. I haven't ended up with any of them on my teams just because when I'm drafting, I prefer to lean towards someone who I know has a bigger share of that team's workload. But there is a potential for injury. There's a potential that Peterson or Ingram just becomes the guy. I don't think Kamara has that kind of value, but he's definitely more of a early version of Tevin Coleman, where he has the potential to break one off for a long touchdown.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't so much sense the hot hand approach to this backfield. I almost kind of feel like it's going to be the 1-2 punch, them spelling each other each game and getting almost an equal share.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right. What about this defense?
So quick, going their wide receivers. So Brandon Cooks is gone. Michael Thomas looks like the real deal. He had an amazing rookie season. He is definitely worth a late first, early second pick. I think Willie Snead is still going to have some value. He's a really good wide receiver. I don't like Kobe Fleener. I don't think he's a reliable person in terms of, not personally. I'm sure he's nice.
I
don't like him at all.
I don't like his face.
I hate him.
Yeah.
But
Remember that time he was a running back? What a jerk. Do you remember that?
what?
Yeah, he stole that touchdown last
Oh,
year.
that's right.
God, I hate Kobe Fleener.
So yeah, But he's still part of this Drew Brees offense, so he definitely has fantasy. He could have fantasy value. I won't say he does, but he could have fantasy value. Their defense is not normally something I talk about, but they have looked pretty good. It seems like they're making a little bit of a turnaround. They're not someone I would draft, but they're definitely another one that potentially could be in the making. You know, there's going to be bad teams in the NFL this year. There's got to be, right? So they potentially could be one of those teams that you use for a stream, but that's about it.
All right. Yeah. Let's move on. Final team on the NFC South and the Panthers. And I've been hearing a lot about nobody's seen Cam Newton, but nobody knows where he's at. Nobody knows what he's going to throw. If he can throw, some analysts are saying that the Panthers are downplaying his ability. I've heard a lot of different things. I've recently started listening to Around the NFL, and that was one of the first things they talked about today when they hit the Panthers was what's going on with Cam Newton. I think he played a little bit in the third preseason game, and I think he looked pretty good. If nothing else, they also have been smart to know that he's coming off shoulder surgery, potentially might not have the deep ball, and so they have surrounded him with playmakers. So Kelvin Benjamin came in at a healthy weight this year and has looked like a goddamn man.
Beast. Yeah.
I mean, he looks really good. I've been reaching for Kelvin Benjamin. Devin Funchess isn't getting drafted, but he's going to have a lot of opportunity. I think out of all the preseason snaps with the first team, I think he was on like 65 of 67 snaps. Greg Olsen, of course, he's one of the most consistent tight ends in the league. And then they went and drafted Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel. And those are guys that are going to be running out of the backfield, running in the slot. And I just think they know, I think they're taking a page out of the Patriots handbook and saying, okay, if we're not too sure if he's going to be able to throw the deep ball, let's just make sure that he can get the ball into someone's hands who can do something with it. And I still trust Cam Newton to be Cam Newton. And anytime they've talked about, even the coaches talked about, well, maybe we should not rely on him running so much, which is why he's usually such an appealing fantasy quarterback. He comes and says something really negative, like, you have to let me play the way I want to play. And regardless of what kind of plays they're going to try to run, I think he's still always going to want to be a mobile quarterback.
That's why I don't like him. I don't like him.
Because he's so good. Going to
hate him.
That's why I love Greg Olsen this year, because of the deep ball. And if it's not really there for Cam and Greg is there, man, I'm trying to get him anywhere I can. If he falls to me in the right time in the draft, I'm all about the Greg Olsen, man.
Yeah. So in terms of running backs, McCaffrey's going in the third round, and especially if you're in PPR, I think he is absolutely worth that. He has looked like easily one of the best rookies of the preseason. In terms of wide receivers, like I said, I love Kelvin Benjamin where he's going right now. I am happy reaching around early to get him.
Reaching around early to get
that
hold on. Drop, guys. Hold on.
Push it in as deep as you can.
Wow.
I like reaching one round early.
Everybody hold on to your butts.
I mean,
my man.
We reaching around.
I like reaching one round ahead to get Kelvin Benjamin.
That does sound good. Man.
Anyways.
It just kind of was a delayed release, but it was good.
Whatever,
it was good.
Whatever.
Man,
it was more so your eyebrows.
Yeah,
you heard it. You just looked at me.
We should. One of these days we're gonna stream this, and you're gonna see the facial reactions. The facial reactions are priceless. Oh, and you're trying not to laugh because you're letting Art talk. Art.
I know. I'm sorry, man. What were you even talking about?
Who were you talking about?
I would say.
So, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this up. Wrap up the NFC South forever and nine.
Oh, and the defense, Carolina Panthers. You can get their defense. But
I hate them.
Don't overdraft them.
Don't reach around for them or anything.
Yeah, do not reach around for the Carolina defense.
I hate them. I hate the Panthers. They just get on me. I'm sorry. They grate on me because they're so good, so good. And even though everybody's talking, well, they're not gonna be this good this year. I was like, bro, Cam Newton ta calote, bro. What? Tacalote, bro. Like he is gonna throw and run, and I hate him.
I see.
I hate him. Anyway, so we're going to take a break. Again, this is where if you want to advertise with us in Living in Fiction, we'll take you on, man. We are looking for advertisers, and we are looking to promote brands, specifically brands here in El Paso.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to talk about this a little bit, but I got to tell you guys, I love this city. I love this city. And a lot of people give El Paso a lot of crap about, I don't like, there's nothing to do here. Guys, there is stuff to do here.
If you're still that person saying there's nothing to do here, what are you doing?
You're just
That's
hating.
on you.
That is on you. I
crazy.
love this city. I love the talent that's in this city. I think that, me personally as a photographer, I know there are a lot of talented people that are artists that are passionate about what they do. And you know what, guys? We want to promote your brand. We really want to promote your brand. So reach out to us. We love this city. Again, like I said, we love this city. We're from here. We're born and raised here in El Paso.
Yes.
I was Lower Valley, puro Lower Valley.
Hey,
I grew up in that Santa Lucia area.
no wonder you're so tough, man. You're so rugged.
You don't even know.
Hey.
That sounds weird. But anyway, so guys, reach out to us, man. We are El Paso proud. We really are El Paso proud, and we wanna help you put your name out there because I think all of you are doing really, really good things here in El Paso.
Yeah.
So that being said, I think we're gonna take a little small break, and then we're gonna come back and talk about my favorite, the NFC East. We'll be back.
Format songs and
Yeah.
make stupid lyrics out of them that would make Mina just like laugh till she cried.
Yeah. Or mad, one or the other.
Oh yeah.
Like that Time Bomb song.
Time bomb.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Shake it, girl. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Something like tick tock. I wanna grab your shake it, girl. Something like that.
Oh boy. We've gone off the rails. You go.
Oh no, that was
Oh man.
Oh, is that it? You want me to do
Play it again.
Okay, here we go.
It is so good.
Oh, yeah.
It is so good.
Can't get over it.
I was on key though with that.
You-
I
you
hit
know
those
what?
notes.
Hey.
Rhythm?
Everything.
I didn't have to do
Everything.
anything.
You didn't even have to speed it up or nothing. No auto-tune.
By the way,
Nothing.
for anyone that's asking, because we didn't mention in the last one, the band that does our theme music is Time and Distance. You should check them out. That song is only on Bandcamp, but they have some really great music on Spotify, iTunes. So check them out.
Yeah, and
Great band.
we go back a long way with that band.
Oh, dude. Christoph's
way.
Coffee Shop, we're playing
Yeah.
little acoustic shows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So they're great.
I
so if
really
you get a
like that
chance,
band a lot.
Greg McGowan out of Time and Distance, a friend of mine, let us use this for our podcast. So thank you to Greg and Time and Distance.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. So let's move on. Guys, we're going to talk my favorite division.
Yes.
The NFC East. And we're going to hit Washington. I'm going to tell you right now, don't draft anyone from Washington. They suck. I hate them. I hate their breathing guts. Just don't draft
I'm
anyone.
going to have
Go.
to mute Fernie's mic for this whole...
Just take it. Ooh.
Talk about stupid Kirk Cousins.
So the Washington football team.
You like that?
Yeah.
I don't like that.
So-
You know what? I don't like that, Kirk Cousins.
So I was before the preseason. I was all on board with Washington. I'm getting a little bit worried because it feels like they are not melding together at all. So they had lost Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon in free agency last year. They just let him walk. Why? Because they figured they had Jamison Crowder in the slot. They had drafted Josh Doctson in the first round last year. And then they went and signed Terrell Pryor as their number one guy. So you figured it was going to be Terrell Pryor as their deep threat. They were going to use Josh Doctson in the Pierre Garçon role and Jamison Crowder in the slot. Doctson feels like another one of these wide receivers.
Dotson. We got Dotson. We got Dotson here. Sorry. That's a Jurassic Park reference.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
That's your second Jurassic Park reference.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Just like nobody cares about this team.
Anyway, Dotson feels like another like Kevin White, Rashad Perriman, first round drafted wide receiver who just cannot stay healthy.
Can't do it.
Jamison Crowder still looks pretty solid, but Kirk Cousins and Terrell Pryor are still struggling to find chemistry. I think it'll still happen. They might be a slow starting offense, but I think they'll be just fine. Kirk Cousins has shown enough in his first few seasons in the NFL to be a solid quarterback. I still think he's a good quarterback in terms of fantasy. Their running backs is where a lot of people have questions. Robert Kelly's going pretty late in drafts, and right now he's their starter. A lot of people like jumping onto Chris Thompson because he is usually their scat back. He's the guy that catches a lot of balls in the backfield. And then
How old are we? Giggling over here.
And then there's their rookie running back that everyone thinks will eventually take over for Robert Kelly, and I'm hoping I'm not messing up his name too bad, but Samaje P. Ryan.
Yeah. That's what it is, right? Samaje P. Ryan.
Samaje P. Ryan.
Maybe if you eat some peanut butter, you might be able to say it better.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I haven't seen enough out of him to get me excited to draft him. I still like the value in Robert Kelly. He's going super late. Wide receivers, I still think Terrell Pryor. I think his story is crazy to enter the NFL to be quarterback, and then at some point just decide I'm going to switch over to wide receivers, to change positions, become a wide receiver, and within a couple years become one of the best in the league.
On the Browns.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I just think he's too talented to not have fantasy value this year. I think eventually him and Cousins will get on the same page. He's worth drafting. I like where Crowder's going because he has always been a favorite target of Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
I'd stay the hell away from Josh Doctson until anything from him.
And with Pryor, I'm going to be super patient with him, man. Like, if the first 4 weeks aren't really going that well, I don't know how I feel about dropping him just because of his potential.
Absolutely.
And how good he is.
And then Jordan Reed, he is always an injury concern, but when he's healthy, he has the potential to be the best tight end in the league, even better than Gronk. Just in terms of what he can do after the catch, how athletic he is. It's just he is so good, and him and Cousins have really good chemistry. So
I think Gruden at some point even said they're going to try to run the offense through Reed.
Absolutely, and so even though he might be an injury concern, I think if you can get 8 to 10 weeks from Jordan Reed, and then replace the other weeks with somebody who's replacement level, I think you should be just fine. And don't draft their defense; it's not good.
Mm-mm.
Don't draft anybody. They're not good, period.
All right.
No, actually, you know what? If the Washington football team can throw this together, they could have a chance at winning the NFC East. Maybe.
No.
It's a stretch, possibly. You know what? Here's the thing, the honest truth. It's anybody's division right now.
It really is.
It really is anybody's division right now. And let's move on to the other team I can't stand. And hey, don't draft anybody, especially stupid Wentz. I can't stand him. He's dumb. Stupid. Let's talk about the Eagles.
So, Carson Wentz, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of like quarterbacks that I draft, if I wait really late to draft a quarterback, I like going for Wentz. He reminds me very much like he's on the trajectory of Derek Carr. Like, pretty solid rookie year, definitely had some missteps. But if you look at who he was throwing to, it was Jordan Matthews, some Zach Ertz, and nobody else.
That's it.
Yeah.
And now they have Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith. They've been talking about Nelson Aguilar, how he's kind of coming to his own as the slot receiver there. And I've always loved Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
The other thing to think about is they don't have a good running back. It feels like the Patriots were the only team that knew what to do with LeGarrette Blount, because any other team he ends up on, he looks like garbage. And so if they're not going to have a solid run game, they're going to use Darren Sproles out of the backfield, and they're just going to throw that ball all day long.
Yep.
And so if you don't...
Well, he can, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There were some games, especially, I remember being just completely wowed by Wentz, his first game against the Browns, where he was reading defenses, he was calling plays at the line of scrimmage. He has the potential to take a really big leap this year, given all the weapons that he has. And the biggest thing for me is he got Lane Johnson, their right tackle, back, because when he started the season with him last year and looked really good, and the second that Lane Johnson left with injury is when he started looking shaky. And so if Lane Johnson can stay healthy, the sky's the limit for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, it unfortunately pains me to say this, but I think the Eagles have a good shot at this division.
Yeah, they've made, that trade they did with the Bills to get Ronald Darby, I think was, they might, because it happened within minutes of the Sammy Watkins trade. Everyone was talking about Sammy Watkins and Jordan Matthews, but Ronald Darby might have been the steal of that whole trade situation. And so, they have a really scary defensive line, and if you add a really solid secondary to that, they're a very solid team all the way around. The biggest question is running back. Like, a lot of people are jumping on the LeGarrette Blount bandwagon because he was, he just racked up touchdowns last year. I just don't see it. He just doesn't look good to me. I think their coach Peterson keeps saying that, he's still very much a part of what they want to do, but I really don't see it. I'd rather take someone like Darren Sproles, who might have a better shot. Wide receivers, I really do like Alshon. It looks like him and Wentz already have developed a chemistry. Torrey Smith does not look any slower. It still looks like, they do a lot of dink and dunk to Alshon Jeffrey, and then they just wait for their moment and let Torrey Smith, just...
That guy flies.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
He'll definitely burn us.
Yeah, he will take a top off of defense. And so I think Wentz is solid. I like Alshon Jeffrey if you go running back in the first round or two, and Alshon Jeffrey's there, I have no problem him being your number one wide receiver. It's just a matter of health. And like I said, I really like Zach Ertz. I think he potentially could lead all tight ends in receptions.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and their defense, like I said, it could be really solid, and depending on who they're playing, they might be worth drafting.
Last year at some point, I picked up Zach Ertz because I needed a tight end because I only had one on my team and I needed one.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz was a solid pick for me last year. He picked up some points for me last year.
Yeah.
If he's there and I see him, I'll pick him up.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Yeah, dude.
Absolutely.
And we haven't mentioned daily fantasy yet, but I just drafted a lineup for that $1 billion on DraftKings, and Zach Ertz is my tight end.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, he's cheap. He's a lot cheaper than the Greg Olsons or the Jordan Reeds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
So basically, what you're telling me is the Eagles suck and don't pick anybody on that team. Okay, thanks. Okay, bye. All right, moving on to the next team in the stupid New York Football Giants. Man, I'm salty.
Yeah, you are.
Very
Straight up,
real
we're about to
salty.
talk
Real
about
salty.
the champions of the
Salty.
NFC East, the 2018 NFC East. What?
That's stupid. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I love
I hate Eli. God,
I hate
can't-
Eli.
I can't stand
I
Eli.
can't stand Eli.
He's just going to be slinging it
Man,
all
you know what?
day.
2007.
Sterling Shepard.
Listen, let me tell you something. 2007, Eli Manning throws the luckiest pass, and
Oh, the helmet catch?
what the hell ever?
That was
So
one of the
angry about it.
funnest
I'm
Super
still
Bowls.
angry about
the
that. That was
best.
10 years
Oh,
ago,
that was
and I'm
the
still
best.
salty.
Oh, man.
Hate
so
Eli
good.
Let's
Manning.
watch that. Let's
Talk
take a quick,
about
we're
it.
going to take a quick break. We're going to watch the helmet catch real quick. We'll be right back.
Talk about Eli's stupid Manning.
I don't like Eli Manning. I think he looked like absolute trash last year. But I think I think their whole front office realized, okay, maybe he's getting a little older and he's going to have a fall off year like Peyton. So let's surround him with some really good talent. So they did just that. They still have Odell Beckham, who is dealing with an ankle injury, but they're thinking it might at the most be 1 or 2 weeks.
He's a beast, though, man.
He's amazing.
He is.
I saw that it went viral, that catch that he made with one hand.
Oh,
Like, it's just...
He does it with
he's
without thinking. It's
insane.
crazy.
Yeah.
Then they bring in. Then they still have Sterling Shepard, their rookie pick from last year, so his second year this year. They bring in Brandon Marshall. They draft Evan Ingram. I mean, Evan Ingram just looks like a big old wide receiver that you can't cover, and so Eli Manning has a lot of options around him, and so I think that potentially might save his fantasy value. But he is not. I do not want to leave my draft with Eli Manning as my starting.
no. I was going to say, I like him as an NFL quarterback. I do not like him as my
I think
fantasy. No.
I think he will absolutely give value to your wide receiver. So Odell Beckham in the first round, absolutely solid. I like Brandon Marshall where he's going. Sterling Shepard, again, dart throw at the end of your draft. I think it's worth it. Evan Ingram, I've seen him go in some deep, like I said, in that 16-team league. He went towards the end as someone who was grabbing 2 tight ends to seed. Someone who didn't get like a top-level tight end. Someone who was like, I'm going to grab a couple tight ends later in the draft and hope that one of them turns out to be something worthwhile. Evan Ingram could definitely be that. He's part of that group we've been talking about who you don't draft him, but you just keep your eye out first couple of weeks, see how he does.
Oh, we've seen Giants tight ends be super successful, man.
And the running backs, I think I've seen Paul Perkins last deep into some drafts because he hasn't shown anything. I think Shane Vereen might be the most productive person out of that backfield. So the running backs from the Giants have been a group I've just been avoiding. And their defense looks solid. I mean, they played out of their mind last year, and I think that they're just going to pick up right where they left off.
We joke that they're going to win the division, but you know what? If anything's going to separate a team in this NFC East, it's going to be the defense. And I hate saying this. I think it might be the Giants. For me, I look at this division, and I think I'm scared of the Eagles. I'm scared of the Giants.
They are my pick this year. They're I feel because of Manning, the experience, the most mature.
Whatever.
I feel like he's just like Arteta on his last leg.
Lucky.
I think they're the ones.
Eli.
And I easily just lost us like half of this city listening to this
easily,
podcast.
yeah.
Right?
If we have a majority probably El Paso audience, and they're not happy
You
with this, but
just done lost everybody. You
but
lost me. How's that?
Yeah, I think they easily have like a top 6 defense. If you want to draft a defense,
is ridiculous. And it pains me to say it, but they're just really good. So finally,
the worst team.
Préndele la vela, bro.
Worst
¿Sabes qué? Préndele la vela. Préndele la vela. I'm gonna turn into the El Paso guy. I can't be too loud because the babies are asleep.
Freddy's gonna wake up my kids.
¿Sabes qué? Prendele la vela, bro. Dak Prescott va a ir al Super Bowl, bro. Va a ir al Super
Going to
Bowl.
the fridge, get the milk.
¿Sabes qué?
That was a terrible.
¿Sabes qué? ¿Sabes qué, bro?
What accent you were doing?
Yeah, what was that?
Because he's Lower Valley.
So, ¿sabes qué, bro? Draft everybody on this team, and you just won your fantasy team. Actually, you know, it's funny. My buddy George, he's never done fantasy football. Kind of like me. I've only been doing this for 3 years, and I would make a mistake like going after Eli Manning because it's name recognition, and then you draft him. You're like, why the hell isn't this guy putting up numbers? And it's because people don't not they don't understand, but they don't know how it works, you know.
Yeah.
And my buddy George was like, dude, I'm gonna go after Zeke. I'm gonna go after Dak Prescott. I'm gonna go after Jason Witten, and dude, I'm gonna wrap it up with Cole Beasley, and it's gonna be an all Dallas Cowboys team. And I'm like, dude, by all means, I'm on board with that one.
Yeah.
Pero sabes qué? That's not going to win you any points on the fantasy team, ese. I mean,
I don't know, man.
Prendele la vela, bro, but not like that, eh?
I do think this is one of the rare occurrences where you can draft that entire team, and you can go first round Zeke. Well, I don't know about first round.
Not
Zeke.
first round, but
probably depending on
second round.
how large your draft league is. First round Dez ish, you know. Second round Zeke.
Yeah.
Third round.
Well,
maybe.
you know,
But
here's
you can still eventually like get
Oh, yeah.
5th, 6th round, get Dak, and
so I have to say, Dak Prescott is coming into his own.
he played out of his mind last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was on par with, I think, who was it that was talking about it? I mean, I think it was Matthew Berry that was saying he was on par with like the best years that Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers had.
Yeah.
And this preseason, it doesn't look like he's missed any time. He's just picked up right where he left off. He looks really good. And with Zeke missing the first potentially, 7 games of the season, and I think earlier today, that was one part of the news we forgot to mention, is that Adam Schefter tweeted that that there are rumblings that it's going to get reduced down to 4 games.
Yeah, he's trying.
And I did have that feeling that, with a name recognition like that, and I mean, I'm not saying or defending anything that he did because, and not to get too much into what Zeke did. I mean, he probably did mess up, but that name recognition for the league, you do have to look at the value. Kind of the same thing with Deflategate and what happened with Tom Brady.
Oh yeah.
It's just what they do, I personally think that I'm a little scared about Zeke simply because I just am. I'm just a Cowboy fan, and as a Cowboy fan, yeah, you get excited about these teams. You get excited about Dak Prescott, but then in the back of your mind, you have 10 years of Prendele la vela, bro, with Tony Romo, and he just learned to let you down easy. And you look at this team and you're like, man, I'm scared. Because it's all about emotion at this point.
Yeah, and it's a huge risk. If you're drafting Zeke and you don't know when you're going to get him, that's a massive risk.
I mean, I think he's going to be running a ton. He's going to be running to the store in week 1. He might be running his mouth in week 2, talking about what he's going to do when he comes back. But at the very worst, you're getting him in week 8. And if you can draft very smart and efficiently, if you get Darren McFadden at the end of the draft, if you get Jacquizz Rodgers towards the end of your draft, you've just made it to week 4. Right. With 2 starting running backs.
Yep.
I think, and this is gut feeling. I really don't know for sure, but I think at wide receiver, running back, Alfred Morris just looks so good.
I don't know why they don't give him more.
Yeah.
If this hadn't happened, if Zeke wasn't suspended, I am fairly certain that the Cowboys would have tried to trade Alfred Morris for something because he has looked very good this preseason.
He looks awesome.
I have no problems if Alfred Morris was on the board. I'll take him. Sure, why not?
And he's not getting drafted in most leagues. That's why, like, if I'm in a real deep league, I'll draft him because I'm like, if he potentially ends up on a different team or if something happens to Darren McFadden, because he hasn't exactly been a pillar of health his entire career either.
Right.
It's just worth it because behind that offensive line, it's solid. But I know we didn't talk about Dak too much, but I like exactly where he's getting drafted. I know there's a lot of people think there's no way he could repeat what he did. I absolutely do believe he can. I think he can have a Russell Wilson type of career.
Bro.
Absolutely.
Bro.
Dez Bryant obviously is Dez. I am still a little bit worried because
Dad's laughing like an idiot.
I am worried about Dez just because his schedule's really rough. They're playing the NFC West.
So he's got to go up against Richard Sherman.
Right. So Richard Sherman,
Legion of Boom.
Patrick Peterson, Janoris Jenkins, Josh Norman. I mean, he's got some pretty rough. He's got a rough schedule, but it's still Dez.
It's Dez.
Yeah, he's gonna make. He's gonna make
solid.
1-2 catches.
Yeah.
And Dak likes to go after him in the end zone.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of Terrence Williams. I don't think he's worth drafting. I think while Zeke is out, I think Cole Beasley is someone that could benefit because when Dez was out last year, Dak looked for Beasley all the time.
And you know what? Beasley's so little and so small, he can run those routes and you'll catch him. I am a fan of Cole Beasley.
Yeah, he's shifty,
period.
man. He's something.
Especially if we're talking about these cornerbacks that Dez might be facing, Beasley might be really undervalued. Like I said, in most leagues he's not getting drafted.
Yeah,
So
I
he
agree with
potentially
that.
could become something worthwhile. Witten obviously has somehow still looked good. There was a video that showed him like totally shaking some defender. It was embarrassing for him.
Old man Witten.
Yeah.
Bro, old trusty, dude. He's my guy, man. I love Jason Witten.
He's good. The other guy, he's in the concussion protocol right now, but Rico Geithers, he has looked real good. He's another one of those guys who played college basketball, didn't play football at all. And they just said, hey,
Let's take a chance on him.
let's take a chance.
Yeah.
He didn't play at all last year. They kept him, and it just seems like he is like the next Jimmy Graham.
Yeah. He's a big guy.
Yeah, and Witten's not going anywhere this season, but they'd be very smart to try to get Witten to kind of mentor this guy into becoming their next tight end.
That's my trusty. That's my boy.
They are going to live and die on this offense because their defense.
Their defense is just awful.
They've lost a lot of people to injuries or suspensions.
Or they just let them walk.
It's really great seeing Jalen Smith come back from his injury, the guy they drafted in the second round last year. People were wondering if he was ever going to play football again. Apparently, he's looked pretty good. They still have Sean Lee, who's solid.
Yeah.
So the linebackers are pretty good, but I know Anthony Hitchens is out for the year. So that's another reason why I'm totally on board with Dak is their defense is going to allow a lot of points to be scored.
A lot of shootouts.
And so they're going to be in a ton of shootouts. So that's why I am all on board with Dak.
Honestly, that's why, just being an honest person, whatever, bro.
Yeah.
The Giants and the Eagles scare me because my defense on the Cowboys is suspect, absolutely suspect. And
Yeah.
every year, George and I will go and have a couple beers and lament this defense. I just don't understand why we can't put a solid defense together. That's what they need.
That's
what they need.
I mean, Dez did try to get Joe Hayden to go over there, but he ended up signing with the Steelers.
Whatever, bro.
I'm just saying.
But you know what? ¿Sabes qué, bro? Dak Prescott, Super Bowl, bro.
And we haven't even talked about the real Cowboys fantasy football MVP here, and this is just a shout out to my mother-in-law. Where's Dan Bailey at, man?
Yeah.
Come on, why haven't we
that's
talked about
right.
Dan Bailey? Come on,
Dan
We
Bailey.
don't really
we
talk
just
about kickers.
Yeah.
He is a guy. If you he is basically the Russell Wilson of kickers. He's definitely not the best, but he is possibly
Solid.
could end this year as the best.
Yeah.
I
He's
picked
in
him
there.
up. I think it was last year I picked him up, and he bought me some points, man. I think one year, he actually won me a couple of games.
He's one of those rare people that can put up a 15, 20-point game.
So in last year's bye, me and my brother-in-law somehow convinced my mother-in-law to drop Dan Bailey. She said, you guys better not pick him up. And so, of course, we're so scared of her. We didn't. But, I mean, that's that guy.
Yeah.
He's
Dan Bailey is money.
Yeah.
And with last year, when they moved moved them back a little. Even still, he was on point.
Move me back.
On point.
Yeah.
So basically, what you guys are saying is draft everybody on the Cowboys because they're awesome. Y sabes que prendele la vela, bro. Prendele la vela, bro. I love that comedian. I really do. Raymond Horta.
Yeah.
He's just, he really did capture what it feels like to be a Cowboys fan. And I think that's why people like understood, that deal that you go over on Thanksgiving and he starts off like it's a game for Thanksgiving and we're playing like Detroit or Washington or Green Bay or one of those teams in the NFC. And he starts off so positive, like we're going to the Super Bowl, bro. Like that one year we played the Panthers and it started off so good and it was like, man, and then all of a sudden people got hurt and people got injured and no, bro. Cam Newton está muy calote, bro. No se puede, bro. No se puede con el Cam Newton. And then you just get sadder and drunker and sadder and drunker. And by the end of it, it's like, no, los Cowboys.
Yeah.
Todo el tiempo, bro. And yeah, it does hurt. And, you had a team. I'm old enough to remember the 92 and the 93 team, the 95 team, and how good they were.
Yeah.
And then to see the trash fire of teams that they've put together since. We're due, man.
I mean, not this year.
After all that, I mean, not this year.
I hate you guys.
I don't know if you guys.
Absolutely.
It's not going to translate, but the air just went out of this room. Like it's gone now. It's cold.
I hate you guys.
The lights just went out.
So anyway, that's the NFC East, and that's our roundup for the NFC. Guys, once again, it has been an absolute pleasure
So fun.
sitting here talking to you about Prendele la vela, bro.
But for what we're doing for the rest of the season, so regular season starts next Thursday. So we'll be here recording while we're watching the first game of the season.
Yeah, Patriots. Dang.
And the Chiefs. We'll be watching that game. We'll be recording a podcast, and what we'll be doing is highlighting all the games after the Thursday game. So obviously we're not going to be including that game. And we'll give you all the players that we think are going to be relevant, who to start, who not to start, possibly some sleepers, and people, especially we want to, Dan and I were talking about making sure we focus in also on people that we think would be a good play in daily fantasy as well. So that's what we have set up for the season. If you guys have questions throughout the season, we'll be taking those as well.
And I'll definitely be asking those questions as well because I've never done daily fantasy, and I want to do it this year because I want to win me some money.
So fun. So fun. You're going to lose a lot more money than you win, but
Don't
it's
talk
still
about
so
that.
fun.
My wife is listening, man.
That's the way it works.
I mean, I said that backwards. You're going to, no, you're definitely going to lose a lot more money than you're going to win.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Let's be serious.
Absolutely.
But dude, the cool thing is you can just play those quarter leagues and you're only losing
That's
like
it. That's
$1.
the cool thing.
That's it.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you guys to help me here because you guys
Art wants some money, man.
Yeah, I know.
He was
Art
very
has
successful
won
last
some
year.
I got a reminder because I was talking last week about Rex Burkhead winning me some money week 17, and by chance earlier today I got an email from DraftKings that was like, "Hey, your week 17 was your highest scoring team you've ever picked," and it was all Rex Burkhead, 31 points.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
That's
Yeah.
cool, man.
And I think by the end of the season, I was never really in the negatives. You're always just kind of evening out. You do the right research and you hit that one time. And
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, it is.
It sounds
It
like
is.
a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to that. Guys, if you can, go to our website, www.crowdandtowncreative.com. We are a full-fledged multimedia, social media consulting agency. We can help you promote your brand. Like I said earlier, we love El Paso. We love this town very much. We're going to love Sundays, especially in this town very much. We're going to have our menudo. We're going to watch our games. And, man, we love this town. And we want to represent this town.
yeah.
So check out our website. You can follow us on Instagram and find us on Facebook at Crowd and Town Creative. You can ask us questions on there, comment.
Don't be scared, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make sure, like I said, do us a favor, subscribe, and tell your friends to subscribe as well.
What did you say? Go to YouTube and
Yeah.
go to all the laptops and hit subscribe.
Hit subscribe. Go to your,
Over and over
go
and
to
over
your
again.
computer labs at your school and hit subscribe.
If you do that and take a picture of it, we'll post it on our account.
Oh, yeah.
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 So this is it, guys. Anything else you'd like to add?
That's it. Love you guys. I'm so excited for the
Good
season.
luck in your drafts. If you're drafting, if you were smart and waited until after week 3 and all
We
those
weren't.
injuries. I think I saw a tweet from Adam Schefter that said for all all the teams that drafted before week 3, there were over 2,700 who had Julian Edelman, Spencer Ware, and Cameron Meredith on the same team.
Yeah.
So good luck to those guys.
Painful.
Loser.
One pathetic loser.
But good luck to you all this weekend on your drafts.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to week 1 in the NFL.
All right.
Awesome, guys.
That's the NFC. We'll see you guys next week. Because I looked at him and I was like, dude, there's no way he didn't
know.
Because I was thinking reach a round early.
I thought you
Oh, reach a round.
Yeah,
That's why we went about reach 1 round early.
but like I thought when you heard it said, like you would have.
No, I'm like, why are they laughing? And then you're like, reach around. I'm like, oh.